Maurizio and Calmo has set two-player pianos to playing the same tune, a piece he refers to, evidently in tribute to William Gaddis, as Agape Agape in D minor. In tribute to Maurizio and Calmo and to the mirror music of his double pianola, though I admit having precious little to do with William Gaddis and maybe having just a touch of agape in the ancient sense, Agape Agape is also the name of this little fable. There once was a town, much like any other, where a boy named Agape wanted to know God. His father and mother were habitually religious folk who kept out of trouble and burned all the right candles without wondering, for example, how the universe could have been made by a being that was afraid of the dark. In fact, they could tell Agape very little about their particular deity. All they could say was how decent people prayed. But is he very old? The boy asked, meaning to learn anything that might identify this divinity. What color is his hair? In the winter, does he wear a muffler? They couldn't be sure. As far as they were concerned, their God was simply almighty. As Agape grew bigger, he figured that must mean God was stronger than anybody. He went out to the town's athletic fields, where young men and women competed with one another, wrestling together for sport. To figure if divinity was in their midst, he joined their games. He was paired first with the youngest children, boys and girls his own size, but Agape was fortified by the fact that he was unconcerned with his own strength. In his arms, competitors fell like lovers, one after another, in a dead faint. Those who were larger fared little better, collapsing in his hold like lumber under their own dumb weight. On up the ranks. The undisputed champion confronted him, a cheat armed with a blade, lunged, stumbled, and was down for the count. Undisputed champion, the boy confronted the truth that God wasn't to be apprehended by brute force. Agape's victory defeated him. He bore that scar. They wished to worship him. Agape declined to be their hero. Who was God? The boy asked his tutors. They were trained to give answers. God is omniscient, they asserted, and recited the most respectable logical proofs. He asked whether, therefore, God knew mathematics. Is he an expert at geography? Can he explain why some people are sad, others happy? They couldn't be sure, as such questions were outside the assigned curriculum. They graduated him, a grown man, and after that, avoided him in the street. He went to the university. The great doctors of astronomy and philosophy and alchemy were no wiser, he soon discerned, for their knowledge extended only as far as their own vocation, whether that sent them out into the heavens or down into the dregs of an iron pot. He challenged each, simply repeating arguments of the others until all conceded defeat and asked to join his school of thought. They revered him. In their estimation, his learning surpassed all they understood, and it was true. He knew that God wasn't to be discovered by study. What yet remained? Having exhausted omniscience and omnipresence, Agape fell upon the obvious. Might not God simply be holiest? In that town, like any other, the temple was the only unusual feature. Rather than fantastic spires, there was an ordinary succession of rooms burrowed into the highest mountain, each chamber leading into another exactly half its size. The first was vast enough to hold everybody, and so many came and went all day that the farmers made it their marketplace. The next room allowed less space for display of vegetables and grains, but for socializing, perhaps over a shared smoke, it offered an appealing familiarity. The third room was very crowded, already so much smaller than the first that 100 people would be packed together as intimate as bodies in a bed. That's why this compartment was sought by lovers who had no place of their own. They could press up against one another, groping under clothes, their prayer a stifled groan. It might take months to attain a place amongst the pious in the fourth chamber. There the priests were gathered, engaged in sacred rites. To prolong their fast, they scourged and ate their own flesh. That seemed to Agape less than almighty. Anyway, he wasn't hungry except to reach the holiest of holies. The years went by. Priests died, and others younger arrived at the back of the chamber to pick up and carry on their prayer. Agape could not have escaped had he tried. So far was he even from the previous compartment, to say nothing of the town outside the mountain. Age stooped his height. Yet still he outlived them all, until the final chamber stood open, a shock of light before eyes he'd long taken for blind. The slight last of his body fit precisely into that empty room. Empty, it seemed to him, save for an old man barely able to stand, who yet watched him face to face with an intensity he'd not ever seen in another person. The man had a great white beard, and his hair hadn't been trimmed in so many years that the ends held a color he'd had when much younger, brown like his own. Then he saw on that specter's forehead the scar he'd himself once received as a boy trying to find his God out on the athletic field. For the first time since he'd entered the temple, Agape thought to turn around. People, more than he had ever known, faced him in prayer. He turned back to his double, the mirror, but already he saw his reflection was fading. He shut his eyes and died. After that, there was just enough space for the next person to take his place.